So I had a client who was a narcissist, and
Mhm.
narcissists will never come in for therapy unless someone else is the problem in their eyes, which is always the case. It's
Oh,
never therapy for them.
interesting.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I've worked with a lot of narcissists over the years, but that's always how it happens. They bring in their girlfriend, they bring in their husband, they bring in their child, and they go, "This person's the problem, fix
Mm,
them."
mm,
And then my job as the therapist is to segregate the parts and to figure out how to help the situation in a way that creates safety, because very often, especially in cases of antisocial and specific cases of narcissism or even borderline, it can be very unsafe.
mm,
So I had one who came in and, without giving too many
mhm,
details, we were having a session one day, and I could see from his body language and the look in his eyes that he was very angry at me. And the
mm,
way that he changed and like everything that he was moving, I was like, okay, we're playing chess, was the offensive move. And in that case, I thought to myself, I'm going to tell him that I know what he's doing, but not by saying I know what you're doing, by saying I can tell you're thinking X. So I got up to the edge of my chair, made myself as big as I could and tried to, make myself feel really
mhm.
powerful. And I said, I can tell you're thinking about killing me right now. And he sat back, he got a little bit smaller and he looked at me and he said, "How did you know?" And I was like, "I'm quitting. I'm done. I'm out of here. That's the end." So that was the day that I decided that I was
Holy
over it.
shit.
Yep. And
Whoa.
that was it. And that was when I decided I was not going to be a therapist anymore.
Yeah, that would do it for me.
Yeah. Writing books,
Whoa.
shadow work tends to be work that I do with people who are like very interested in getting to the root cause of the things that are weighing heavily on their heart. They want to understand themselves better. And it's never a blaming thing. It's never
Mm,
like fix this other person. And
mm,
that's been the real change for me.
mm, thank you for sharing that. I
It's a
got
wild, wild
it's
story.
wild.
It
It's
still
wild.
gives me goosebumps
It
years
I had
later.
no, I had truth like, I call them truth bumps because 'cause I'm like, that truth feels like a or sensation in my body feels like there's some kind of resonance, and then, I got a little bit teary-eyed whenever you mentioned, like, someone taking a child to a therapist because that happened to me,
Yeah.
as a youth, and I didn't feel like so I kinda put, like, a negative connotation or taste into my mouth for
A lot of
traditional
kids do.
therapy,
A lot of
for a
kids do.
long time.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until last year that I decided to explore ketamine assisted psychotherapy and then had my therapist. And I was like, oh my God, there can be a grounded, super spiritual, tapped in, mystic therapy like that. Those
Oh,
exist.
yeah. Not only do they exist, there's a lot more of them than you think, and
Yeah.
most of us know each other and we talk behind the scenes.
Yeah. I'm just like, wow.
It's
Just
so
very
cool, isn't
pivotal.
it? I
Hmm.
found so many people who went to therapy as kids who thought that therapy sucked, and it really is because it wasn't them, it was their
Hmm.
parents.
Hmm.
And when I was studying to become a therapist, I'd studied cognitive neuroscience in undergrad, but then I specifically went on to become an LMFT, which is a licensed marriage and family therapist, because, in my opinion, I wanted to understand more about systems and how those impact who we are, because I already knew the neurology of it. I didn't need more of that. I didn't need to go on and study that additionally.
Hmm.
And with systems and families for children, they make up so much of who we become because they create our memories. The things that they say to us, the positions they put us in, the spaces they bring us to, they make us who we are.
Brings tears to my eyes
Yep.
because I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can see, I think about my stepfather who you transitioned, and whenever at the time I was reading Many Lives, Many Masters when I found out, and then I'd written my book with the perspective of him being alive, and then I was like, oh, guess now because I hadn't talked to him in like a decade or more, and then I was like, I guess I would grieve, feel, heal, but now I got to go back and rewrite with the perspective that he's dead or that he won't, and never read these pages. But I had like a clear, like, download of, I was like, wow. I was like, we made an agreement to come into this lifetime to positively or negatively affect me or impact my life in certain ways so that through the expression of me, it would have the highest healing for the greater good or the collective consciousness.
Oh, I
And
get
so
goosebumps.
it was just like a, and so I was just thinking of that and being little me at the same time and having compassion. And so thank you for that. Like you mentioned narcissists and stuff, and I think that that's also like thrown around a lot. Um,
Yes, it is.
so is it a scale? Is there a healthy amount of narcissism? Is like what's your
Yeah.
um yeah.
I'm actually really glad that you brought this up because this is another thing, just like shadow work and TikTok and things like that, that misinformation gets out there. And I find, believe it or not, that a lot of people who fling around these terms tend to have some of the traits and they're like, perfect, I can call someone else a gaslighter. And
Mm,
I see it constantly. So here are my thoughts. No, it is not a scale when we talk about a
mm,
personality disorder.
okay.
A DSM-5 classified person with a personality disorder needs to have a certain amount of the traits in order to have the personality disorder. If you come in one shy, you do not have it,
Uh,
period.
okay.
But there are a lot of narcissistic people. And I think the way that our society is moving us, a lot of us are narcissistic. I mean, think about today. I spent an insane amount of time staring at myself, whether it was like getting ready today, creating content for social media, recording this podcast.
Mhm,
That's not normal. We
mhm,
weren't supposed to do that. I don't think human beings had mirrors until that long ago.
mm,
And we spend so much time evaluating, critiquing, looking at ourselves,
mm,
trying to sell ourselves in different
mm,
spaces, walking on stages or into networking rooms and going, here's my elevator pitch, and we're
mhm,
all a little
mm,
narcissistic.
mm,
But I don't necessarily know that that's the worst thing. Like it
mm,
exists, it's human, it's the way that our world goes, but it doesn't mean that we have a personality disorder. And I
mhm,
think what's happening now as our internet warriors are coming out in abundance is we're clinging to whatever weapons we can find. And a lot of the time it's
mm,
misdiagnosing people or even misdiagnosing ourselves. I've seen
mhm.
people diagnose themselves with things like BPD or ADHD. Every single person is got some kind of like neurotypical definition of who they are. And
No
I'm like,
spicy or
if
neurotypical.
every single person is neurospicy, then by definition, every single person is normal.
Mm,
Abnormal is the minority. So we can't all be neurospicy. I think at this
mm,
point, what's happening is our brains are moving and adjusting and changing, and more of us are moving in a direction that's the new normal.
mm,
And that's why the DSM exists, is as we change, so do the definitions, and they'll continue to evolve and
mm.
move and shift with us.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Oh, I mean, I think of myself, or I'm like, I've definitely gone. I'm like, okay, traits of this, traits of this.
We all do. You should have seen every person in when I in my therapy cohort when we were learning about abnormal psychology, we were
Mhm.
diagnosing ourselves. We're like, "This is it. I've got BPD," and it's like if you're even questioning it, you probably don't. Because personality
That's
disorder
like,
people very rarely look to themselves and go, "There's something wrong with me." But it's normal. And
yeah.
again, back to that conversation about wanting our brains want to put things in boxes. It can be very
Mm.
relieving to be able to go, "Oh my god, that's why I'm like this. I'm autistic." And it's like, "No, you're not. You're
Yeah.
not actually. You have signs. There are pieces of it that if there were more of them, you'd be classified as it, but you don't have enough, and that's okay.
Mm,
And
mhm.
we can live in the gray space."
Yeah, no, that I kinda laugh just because I'm like, "Am I masking autistic? Am I" you know, like, looking at different, like I'm like, I kinda like the terminology just even being neurospicy. I'm
I know, it sounds exciting. Now I wanna be that too. But I
like
think that's what we all do, and I
Mhm,
it's so normal for us, and we want to feel like we understand ourselves. We wanna
mhm.
be able to put it into a nice, neat little box and go, "Oh my god, that's it.
Yeah. Or like, "Oh,
That's
okay.
why."
Yeah, now I have something a label I can identify with and or
Mhm.
that provides probably some sense of comfort or safety."
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it, and that can regulate our whole nervous system. Even if it's something you don't want to be labeled as, it can feel so relieving to just be able to put a name to something.
Mm. That also makes me think of, like, the chaos as the normal or feeling normal.
Right.
I like
And
that.
chaos
unknown.
and control.
Mhm.
In my book, I talk about life lenses. There are certain
Mm.
people who, based on the way that your memories formed, see the world through the lens of control and chaos. And it really is a spectrum. But certain people are going to gravitate towards that because it makes sense. So I need safety, I need control, I need an understanding, I need a nice, neat little box. I'm going to find a partner who is chaos personified, and we're going to get together and make each other crazy until the end of time.
God.
But it's not
Not it.
everybody.
No.
But that's not everybody. Other
Yeah.
people have different life lenses, like a need for fairness, and everything has
Mhm.
to be about, social justice and let's make the scales tip even. I'm
Mm.
gonna teach you lessons that are gonna make you open your eyes. And on the other
Ugh.
side, they're gonna end up with someone who is like a super liberal or super Republican, and they're going to be like all the way in and like, no, like Jewish people don't need to worry about what's happening with Israel right now. And it's like, "Whoop."
Ah.
But we tend to partner with people who just push our buttons. And I think that's
Mhm.
our natural tendency. And like how shadow work happens for most of us is not through these like nice, easy sessions. It's through finding people who trigger the fuck out of us,
Mhm.
and then we enact some of these things with him and recreate our own childhoods or past lives
Mhm.
until we figure it out or we think we figured it out.
Yeah, for me, I mean, there was definitely some chaotic relationships in my 20s. And then finally got to the point I was like, "Okay, what's the common denominator here?" Me.
And for anybody who doesn't feel like they've gotten to that point yet, that's okay. Like, we're all on our
Yeah.
own journey and
Yes.
we figure it out in our own time. But there are nicer ways to do it. And Joe Dispenza is the first one who I ever heard say you can create change from a place of peace instead of rock
Mm.
bottoms. And
Mm.
that always resonated with me because it's true.
Oof. Yeah, yeah. Listen, I'm like, even though I tell myself rock bottom was where I planted new seeds, but it's like I do prefer the peace route. I did this super beautiful meditation with him. I think it just got released a few days ago with Milan. Wow.
Mhm.
I mean, just like so,
Good.
uh, I was like, this is so juicy, and saw like visions of galloping on a horse with my dad and like holding hands with like future and younger me, and like then like the people that I was meditating with in a circle. It was just like, I was like, this is so beautiful.
And that's the way that it could be all the time.
Oh,
Mhm.
oh, so good. Oh yeah, I kind of want to touch on, like speaking of future. um, so we've talked about like going to the past.
Mhm.
I kind of want to, is that going to the future?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, okay.
They're inherently tied, and
Mm,
this is where we just change the name of things. So when we hop into that theta brainwave state and we go back into moments that our soul needs us to see, we can either regress into the past, aka shadow work, or we can use quantum physics and look at future potentials and what it is that we could do. It's the exact same process, but just a different direction. Are we going back to heal and integrate, or are we peeking forward to heal and integrate?
mm,
Same concept. And that's what I think manifesting really is to me. And
mhm,
it's using all those things that we talked about before when we talked about creating memories. When we are tapping into the sensory experiences and the emotions, the physical responses, and the thoughts of potential realities that we have and integrating those, we're becoming whoever we want to become faster.
mhm,
We're bringing that future into the now in the same way that with traditional shadow work, we're bringing the past and altering it into the now.
mm. It's kind of like creating a future memory.
And exactly. It's
It
creating a
hasn't,
future
yeah.
memory.
I mean, I love visualizing, and or like go. I mean, just. And sometimes I'll go into a session with like maybe a more fixed idea of something I wanted to visualize, but then sometimes I go into a space and something will pop up and I'm like, holy shit. Like that one, then like I'm like, that one was not one that like present me went in with. It was like a surprise or miracle or whatever.
That's that good shadow work, because when we do that, it's like we have no attachment to it and we
Mm,
just let whatever our soul needs to show us come through. That's
mhm,
so powerful because we're not trying to force it, we're just flowing into it. It's
Mm.
so good.
Oh, yes. Flow over force. Mm.
Flowing over forcing, but you said you love visualizing the future, and I bet you a lot of people who are listening to this are like, "I can't see anything. I can't
Oh, yeah.
visualize the future," or "I can't see memories. I don't really dream." It's super common, and it doesn't mean that you can't do these things. You can still
Mhm.
absolutely manifest without being able to visualize what your future is, or to do shadow work without being able to see clearly what the past is. We have different capabilities depending on how it is that our brains processed information when we're young. The same
Mm.
way we learn differently. So there might be some people
Mhm.
who like to read the book, some people like the audio, some people want to see the movie.
Mm.
And it all has to do with how you process information.
Mm.
If you're someone who's a visual learner, the visual stuff or the clairvoyance is going to be very clear and easy, and you can tap into that, make it really strong, but that's not everybody. And it's one of the
Mm.
biggest questions that I get asked when people ask about shadow work or about manifestation. You can do it and focus on your other senses. So, thinking about which of your senses are the strongest on a day to day basis, or how you learned when you were young. Were you
Mm.
the kid who could just like sit down and listen to a whole lecture and you didn't need to study? You just went for the test and you did well? Because if so, it might be the audio piece of it,
Mm.
it might be the listening. So, you can tap into those things, listen to binaural beats more often, listen to sounds when you're on a walk, and that could be your meditation for the day, like listening to the rustling of the leaves and the trees and
Mm.
how the wind is whipping your hair and it's making those slight little scratchy noises. Just paying attention to whatever sensory pieces are strongest for you. And then use those. So when you're manifesting, what does the future sound like? For
Mm.
me, it sounds like a beach because the future version of me is in La Jolla, and
Mm.
she is
Yeah.
on the beach and she's just free with a cup of coffee 'cause I'm a coffee girly, toes in the sand or sitting out. Yes. And I hear it. I can hear it so strongly. So if you don't feel
Mm.
like you can see it, just use your other senses. It does the same
Mm.
thing. Just strengthen the ones you got.
I'm glad you spoke into that because it does speak to like growing up, my mom was very big on, I'm like, I tell people we didn't have a lot financially growing up, but we were rich in other ways. And one of the biggest ways was like the emphasis on dreaming big and visualizing and talking about it with my mom. And it was just very profound. So it makes sense connecting that dot to like, okay, I'm able to visualize things because I use that as like a young child. We would be
She's been
driving.
training you your whole life.
I didn't realize it. I mean, like in that capacity, right? With
Yes.
that.
Yeah, it's funny. We all it starts when we're young. Those first 7 years of our life in terms
Mm.
of how our brain is going to form are so critical. And in those young years, if you spent them hiding in a dark closet because you were afraid and you heard fighting all the time, you might learn in an audio sort of way. Everything's about what you hear. If you're someone who is taught to visualize, it's going to be that piece. If you were someone who, like me, I wrote everything down. I don't know why. I was a writer. I've been a writer my entire life. It's no surprise I ended up writing a book if I were to think about it critically. But I write everything. I used to listen to lectures at school, whether it was undergrad or graduate. I'd take notes the entire time. And then I would go home and I'd take notes again. I'd rewrite my notes because
Mhm.
I learned by writing, and I'd make flashcards because that was how it was going to land somewhere within my mind. It was always that way when I was little and I didn't know how to talk to people about what I was feeling. I'd write them down. Everything was about written word for me. So that's how I learned. And the more we know about those things, the more we can tap into them and use them for how we do things as adults.
Mm. Love all of that. Like just the different little tools and like questions that people can ask themselves, like, and ask the younger, like, okay, what did I do as a child if I can't, like don't know, or what can I grasp or start with today? That's so awesome.